let's get into it. You were with the wing first, and then you were a combat engineer. So did you
Yeah.
start out as an engineer, or did you lat move?
Yeah. No, I started out as an engineer. In 2005, I went into boot camp and went into engineer school in about 2006 or the late 2005. Um, and it might have been 2006 actually after leave and all that stuff. Um, so I started out as a common engineer. I was a common engineer for 8.5 years, 8.3 years. So,
Is that what you wanted to do when you came in?
so it's a funny story. I don't know how funny it is, but I I joined when I was 29 years old, and
Mm.
the cutoff was, so I went down to North Carolina with a friend of mine, and we visited a friend that was a Marine down there in Camp Lejeune, and we I ended up falling in love with the culture and the camaraderie and all that shit, that goes with the Marine Corps. And we went back to Chicago, where I'm from, and I immediately the next day went to the recruiter's office, and I figured out that really quick that the cutoff was 30, and I was 29 with about 3 months to go, so I had to pull the trigger,
Yeah.
and I did, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I thought, everybody was going to be a grunt, all that crap. I didn't know anything about it. So I talked to a recruiter, and he told me, which I think now this is bullshit, that infantry was closed out. I don't know if
That's what
that's
they.
ever possible.
No, dude, that's around that time frame. Actually, that's what was going on. I got
Really?
told the same thing in 2006. And if you listen to the first like 10 episodes, I think like 6 of them is someone saying the exact same thing. It was so
Really?
hard to find an infantry spot because the war was going on, and the people that were
Yeah.
joining were like, "I want infantry," and there's so many spots.
Yeah.
There's only so many spots.
That's interesting. All right. I don't feel so bad now.
I ended up being
So,
open contract because of it.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't offered an open contract. I was offered a tanker, artillery, and combat engineer. I heard combat, and I was like, let's do that. Not knowing that there's a possibility that I could go to the Airwing, which I did, or I could go to group, or then you can go to division, and I ended up going to the Airwing. You don't find out where you're going, obviously, until you're done with school and all that crap. And it was like a week left of school, and they're like, Matisi, you're going to MWSS 371 in Yuma. I was like, Yuma, where is that? I had no idea where that was, and it ended up being Yuma, Arizona, and which a lot of units go out there to train
Yeah.
um, in the summer months and whatnot to get used to the heat. I guess I think the main reason is, and the environment.
Did you find it weird being in boot camp as like an older guy? Because I was 22 in
Oh
boot
yeah,
camp, and then MOS school, I was 22, 23, and then I hit the fleet, I was 23. And I thought I felt a little older, but you're 29. I had one guy in my platoon who was about that age, and I think even the drill instructors were like, "Why the fuck did you join?" And he's like, "I just got tired of my job, so I became a machine gunner." you know?
yeah. I mean, that's basically how it went for me. Like I wasn't. I had a good job in the civilian world before then. I was a sous chef for a dessert bar in Chicago, and so I made a lot of desserts and high end desserts for a lot of high end clientele in this restaurant. And so yeah, being in boot camp as 29, you can imagine I was messed with a lot
Yeah.
by the drill instructors. I was the old man everywhere I went from that day forward. But I constantly was on a quarter deck just because of my age. That was the only reason why. When I went in, I was overweight. I was a drunk, and they whipped me into shape really good, And by the time I left there, I was, running faster, doing more pull-ups than anybody else in the platoon, pretty much. But I was never appointed the guide or a squad leader or anything like that, which I thought. Looking back, I think it's kind of weird, as an older, more mature person, you would want that, You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think none of the older, including myself, none of the older guys in our platoon were ever appointed. That seemed to be preferential treatment, from our drill instructors. From what I saw from my senior drill instructor, it was like guys that he liked. I guess it wasn't necessarily I remember in boot camp, our guide peed the bed, and I'm like, how's this dude the fucking guide? He pissed the bed, and everyone knows it. It's like, so it was. It felt to me like they were trying to make someone feel, bring someone up, which is good, whatever, man. I don't want to be the guide anyway. Fuck that.
No, I didn't want to, but I was just like, looking back, I was like, I find it interesting because after boot camp in school and in the fleet, I was immediately put in as a leadership role.
For sure.
But yeah.
One thing
was wild.
One thing when I got to the fleet, I was married. When I got to the fleet, I was 23, and I remember my sergeant was like, "Hey, are you living on base or out in town?" I'm like, "I don't know. I guess on base." And I got a house. Ended up getting a house a lot quicker than expected, and I remember my sergeant was like, "Hey, if you decide to go buy furniture for your house, you need to take one of your NCOs with you." And I'm like, no offense, Sergeant, but I'm like older than you and all of them, and I've been living on my own. And man, they did not take kindly to that. Did you run into a situation like that where sometimes you got treated by your rank as you should, for your job and stuff, but for the real world stuff, were they still treating you like that, or they, respect the age a little bit?
When I got to the fleet, they definitely respected the age.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was immediately, not immediately, like in the Airwing, things were a little different in the wing. The leadership there, when I got to the wing, I think I just was promoted to Lance Corporal because in boot camp I was a PFC. Nice. And so it was when I got to the fleet, I was a Lance Corporal, and all the sergeants and the corporals, I don't know if it was because they were stuck in the wing or what, but they hated life. And so everybody paid the price for that.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Gotta let the dog in.
Yeah.
That's all good, man.
She's deaf. She can't hear me. So.
Okay.
She's born that way, whatever. So yeah, I don't know if it was because they were in the wing. Some of them used to be in the infantry and as combat engineers, and they got PCS to the air wing, but they just had a hard on for everybody, and it wasn't like there was a lot of hazing back then. It was like before they started really cracking down on that shit, and
it's funny because the people in before you would say that you were going through an easier time than them, probably.
I'm sure I was.
What was combat engineers doing in the air wing? Because I've never really talked to anybody that was over there doing that.
A lot of vertical construction. We built a lot of SWA huts. We built in Iraq. When I went to Iraq, in the air wing, I did a lot of field expedient showers, stuff like that. Built a couple SWA huts and did a lot of working out. I was out at Camp Korean Village.
Okay.
Out in the west side of this country, and so I did a lot of. There wasn't a whole lot to do, So I worked out a lot. I ran a lot. I was probably in the best shape of my life at that time in the Marine Corps. So
were you getting out of the Marine Corps what you were hoping? Coming in not knowing anything, and now you're a combat engineer, and now you're building showers and shitters for the air wing.
Well, it was showers and shitters for the grunts, and I appreciated that. So I'm sure they did too. Yeah, and we delivered them to them, in a convoy, and so I got to see what it was like before deployed. For the infantry, and it just solidified the fact that, man, this is where I want to be. I want to be with these guys, because I knew that was an option. So yeah, it was not glorifying. I did not like what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of demo ranges, and we learned a lot about our demolitions. Not as much as I did in division, um, but it was a little bit of a glimpse of what could happen. So when it came time to re-enlist or get out, I re-enlisted and got a nice fat bonus and with the option to go where I wanted. And I chose second CEB, and that was in 2000, late 2007, going into 2008. Um, my reenlistment date was in 2008, but I started talking about it in 2007. So I got that, and then I went to division.
So for me, when I did my lat move, I was a mechanic when I first came in, you know, because it was open contract. I conducted my lat move while I was in Iraq. And then when I got back, I got orders to 10th Marines. So I went from maintenance battalion, you know, MLG, so Marine Logistics Group, for those that don't know, over to division, you know, with the combat arms units and stuff like that. So I get to 10th Marines. And man, I'll tell you what, slugging it out as a mechanic for 3 years and just hating my life for 3 years made going over to the combat arms side like so much better. And it was like I'd see people that were like bitching, like, "Oh, we got to go to the field," or "Oh, we got to do this," and I'm like, "Dude, I am loving this, man. This is what I wanted to do." Was that the same kind of vibe that you had when you switched from the wing to division?
Oh, I was stoked, man. I was so happy. I was like in a great unit. I had great leaders, all the way up to the colonel and the sergeant major. Just really supportive. They believed in in their NCOs, where I can't say the same thing for the Airwing. The Airwing was, I'm not gonna say top heavy, but it was a lot of higher ups, and they weren't the best. You know what I mean? But I'm glad that I did that first and went to division, then doing division and going to the wing. Like I said about my other NCOs, when I got to the wing, that's what they did, and they were bitter. They were just not happy. So yeah, I'm glad I did it in the succession that I did.
Now, when you get to division, you know, and you're an engineer there, how does the training change? How does the field ops, like, what does the field op look like for you guys? And then you guys deploy as augments, right? You never deploy as a unit?
Well, no. So when I got to division, I didn't go into a line platoon. A line platoon is for augments, you know.
Okay.
I got put in the raw clearance platoon. So, and they deploy as a platoon. Okay. And there's 3 platoons. So we were in MAC, Mobile Assault Company, MAC. And I was RCP2. And so we deployed as a platoon. And so the workups and the training was IED, counter IED heavy from a mounted position with the ability to dismount and do foot sweeps and stuff like that. So there was a lot of, I don't know if you've been to North Carolina.
Yeah. I was in Legion for 7 years.
Okay, so the backwoods out there and the tank trails and all that stuff. We just ran up and down the tank trails with simulated IEDs and whatnot, and then obviously we did CACs and whatnot, Mojave Viper, whatever you want to call it, and that was the extent. We did a lot of demolitions. We did a lot of training at the engineer training area. ETA 3, ETA 2, where they have a sapper course, and just a lot of counter IED, because that was what I was going to be doing. It's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be, in a support position and as an augment to an infantry unit. It just didn't happen that way until later.
When you're doing the route clearance stuff, I mean, I've done a lot of like IED lanes and stuff like that. doesn't that get like super repetitive? Doesn't that get like, I mean, because it doesn't feel like how much can you train in sweeping in front of the vehicle or identifying piles of trash or whatever? Because to me it seemed like it's one of those things that you can't really get a grasp on until you're in the country and you can actually see the landscape and see how they're actually employing and stuff.
Yeah. It's a good question. You definitely get it gets monotonous for sure.
Yeah.
It depends on the trainers.
Mm-hmm.
Down at Courthouse Bay, there was a group of contractors, military contractors that were running these lanes. These guys have been to country, so they know what they're doing, and they set up the lanes, they set up the routes that we did, and we saw things that you would see in Afghanistan. And then they introduced V sweeps, which is basically, I don't know if you know what it is, but if anybody doesn't know what it is, it's the trucks are in the convoy and you set out guys way out. It kind of resembles a V or a Y sweep or a V sweep. I've heard it called both, but you got guys the farthest out looking for triggermen, and you got guys in the middle looking for like wires, kite string, stuff like that. And then the guys closest to the truck are looking for the actual IEDs before the trucks get to them. We've done that. I did that in country quite a bit. And but I would say it all depends on the trainer. If it's just a Marine, which is fine because there's plenty of Marines that know what to do. But if you've only deployed once, it's kind of harder to get your point across than somebody who's done it multiple times and knows how to set up the lanes and all that stuff. And then obviously when we got to Afghanistan at Camp Bastion, there was the lanes there.
Yeah, they have a pretty good
by
program.
That time, I had already, they do.
I think it's JIADO is the name of the organization.
Yeah.
It's like Joint IED Defeation Organization or something like that. It's
you're right.
And they have guys all over the place that are plugged into the intel networks and getting feedback like live from in country to help train guys like you in identifying, displacing IED, doing whatever you got to do with an IED. Were you guys also working with like the Huskies and stuff like that, or not the Huskies? What was the vehicle?
Yeah.
What's the big one with the arm on it?
The Buffalo.
Buffalo. That's the Buffalo. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a mechanic, I had to go to a school for that.
I bet. We had a wrecker operator that was attached to us in our route clearance platoon. So he was our mechanic and our wrecker operator. So he got very familiar with all the vehicles, the Huskies, the Buffaloes, the 4x, the 6x, all that stuff. So yeah, we used it all. That was pretty much the package, right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was in Marjah in 2011, dude, the route clearance platoon guys, I think we had more Army guys come through our area and do it than Marines, but man, those dudes were getting blown up constantly, and they would clear a route and then they would get backlayed on, so the insurgents would come through and put in IEDs behind them. I remember, I think Route Alligator was a real bad one in Marjah. How well protected did you feel if you're like cruising inside that Husky? Because that thing's just kind of made to get blown up. And do you want to explain what that vehicle is and then kind of go through how you felt in it?
Yeah, sure. The Husky is a one-man vehicle. It's a scouting vehicle, pretty much. The Army uses it as a scouting vehicle more than the Marine Corps. And what I mean by scouting is that they would go up ahead, maybe with the protection of a gun truck behind them. But the Husky has two panels that fold down, and they're radars. They're metal detectors. Sorry, they're metal detectors, and they're basically just a big CMD or a Chia, whatever those metal detectors were called. It was later that I've never been in one. I've never even sat in one before. I was the guide in my route clearance platoon. I was the lead truck commander. So you basically had the 2 Huskies that were staggered, then the first gun truck, which was me, which is usually consisted of a 4x MRAP. This is before MATVs or anything like that. This is down in Garmser, where I was my first deployment to Afghanistan. And so yeah, the Huskies are made to blow up. They're big metal detector. Later on, they came out with a GPR, which is like a big ground penetrating radar panel in the front. So instead of rolling over the IED and then finding it, hopefully not getting blown up, you got this radar in front of you a little bit, kind of like how the Humvees used to have that flag looking thing in front of their Humvees in Iraq, just to give you a little distance between you and the bomb. It was they could take a hit, man. Those vehicles, my Husky drivers both got hit several times. One of them actually got hit too many times and had to go home. They sent them home from Afghanistan. That's when we were in Marjah, though. We got pulled out of Garmser and sent to support 3-6 as a route clearance platoon for the invasion in 2010. But yeah, the MRAPs, the gun truck, I felt safe in. I got blown up pretty good in Garmser on Rock Cowboys. It was about 125-pound IED, hit my side of the truck and completely lifted it off the ground. And we had a mine roller and everything. The Huskies missed it. They missed the IED. They missed the anomaly in the ground. And they had ground penetrating radars at that time. And my Husky driver actually ended up admitting the fact later that he's like, I saw something in the ground, but I didn't think it was anything. I was like, you fucking asshole. I got blown up for that. But yeah, those vehicles are made to take a hit, and we all know that. And they save lives. Later on, and in other parts of Afghanistan, the army was getting hit, and they were tearing their vehicles apart. They're I forgot what kind of vehicles they have.
The Max, Pro Max, or whatever the heck it is.
They have Max
Pro.
Have Pro Max Pro. They have Max Pros, and they also have the ones that sat really high. They had the 7-ton tires on them and wheels on them, but like their doors are really small. I can't remember what they're called, but nonetheless, different. And I remember seeing videos earlier on in like 2011, 2012, just getting torn apart by the IEDs, and they got smart and they learned how to defeat the mine rollers and
offset.
All that. So
there's a lot of different. It's one of those things. It's like an ongoing chess match where you got to like counter what they're doing. They're countering what you're doing. You got to kind of like you were saying, that swing arm that came down. That was to help with, I think, IR sensing IED triggers. Yeah. And it was supposed to simulate the engine block being ahead of the actual vehicle so that it would set it off at the wrong time.
Blow up in front of it, yeah.
Yeah, it's it's like pretty crazy, man. The only real exposure I had to the vehicles as a mechanic was in Iraq, adding like new armor and stuff to them. But I got to go to the school there was a course in North or South Carolina where they built the Cougars, the Cougar like 4x and 6x MRAPs and the Buffalo, and it was cool. They had the Buffalo there that was actually in Transformers, in the first Transformers movie. And
you're talking about down in South Carolina, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember down there.
I'm trying to remember the name of the town that it's in. It's some little tiny country town too. And I remember
it's not far from Charleston, though.
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes or 45 minutes from Charleston. Those things are so easy to drive for being as big as they are and like bulky and stuff. We actually had to drive them. We got there the day before the Marine Corps birthday, so then of course we went out and got fucking smashed, that night, and then at like a Texas Roadhouse or something in South Carolina, and then the next day we're super hungover, but now it was the day we had to drive the Buffaloes around. And it was like, all right, take it around the parking lot, back it up. You can back it into a spot. Cool, let's take it out on the highway. And you're just like, oh shit, here we go. Get this 30-ton vehicle or whatever.
I should be doing this.
But what was really cool is the arm on it. You know, it had that articulating arm that could swing out and kind of investigate IEDs. Did you guys find that to be useful at all, or was it just more of a show thing, you know, that you guys didn't actually use?
No, we used it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, if the Huskies found something, our tactics changed, obviously, like you were saying, you know, when their tactics would change. And so we didn't want to set patterns or routines or anything like that. But there was times when the Huskies we had EOD attached to us as a route clearance platoons. They had a truck of their own and with a robot and all that stuff. So sometimes when the Huskies find something, we will set a cordon. The Huskies will move up, the gun truck will move up, and we'll set a cordon. And EOD will come up and do a hand sweep, do a foot sweep, and find it that way and bip it right there, blow in place if you don't know. And other times, you know, with the Y sweeps, a lot of times I was out there doing the foot sweeps and finding it. But there was times where we used the Buffalo arm a little bit. There was a time when it got blown off, you know.
Yeah, of course.
You know, you're pulling on a wire and it's gonna go sometimes, and it's happened.
Dude, what's going through your mind when you're out there V sweeping? You're on foot sweeping for a bomb.
Well, that's what I wanted, man. That's what I wanted to do as a combat engineer. You know, that's what my job was supposed to be. That's what I thought. So I was all about it. Yeah, there's a level of fear, you know, and I talked about it not too long ago in one of my posts. About being how well I looked for IEDs in Garmsur compared to Marjah and then compared to Sangin, and the level of comfort and confidence I achieved later on. So in Garmsur, I was a little nervous, you know. I had a main sweeper that was in front of me, you know, and he was very good. His name was Lance Corporal Tubbs, and he did a wonderful job. But there's always that fear of, I was a sergeant at this time, and I was his leader, and there's always that fear of him missing something and me stepping on it, because I was a second man. So, and it wasn't until I got to Sangin that I was actually really doing foot sweeps and on my own. Like I was Lance Corporal Tubbs, you know, in Sangin. In Garmsur and Marjah, I was mainly, you know, calling the shots on the radio, talking to my platoon commander and platoon sergeant and all that stuff, and leading the patrol. There was sometimes we actually went on patrols and supported 2-2 as a route clearance platoon on foot. It was weird. We would dump the trucks. We would dump the trucks and go out on foot with 2-2 sometimes, and we did that.
When you were in Garmsur, what kind of IEDs were you seeing there? Like, what was the big threat?
There was a lot of there was obviously victim initiated, you know, pressure plates, whatnot. We saw a couple of triggermen operated, you know, so a guy sitting way off down to a couple of a couple 100 feet away in the bushes, tree line, watching us, and he would pull the trigger. We saw what did we see? What else did we see? That was mainly those two.
When you had a triggerman, how often did you ever get the trigger guy? If you had never. Yeah. Never. Their standoff was that far.
There was one time when we were out, there was 2 squads out. We had dumped the trucks and we were walking, and one of one of the other squad leaders was hit by an IED. He wasn't severely hurt. He ended up having to get medevaced eventually that night, but like it wasn't like an amputee or anything like that. But we feel like there was, where he was hit, there was a road, and then on the other side of the road by this little compound was a guy just standing there, and we all thought, that was him, because it wasn't a pressure plate that he stepped on. It was up on a berm, and it was almost kind of like a directional frag container, a DFC or whatever you want to call it. And it kind of just peppered him with shrapnel and stuff like that. But this guy was on the other side of the road watching. And when we went to go talk to him, guns pointed at him, whatever, another IED went off. And it was a Legacy IED, and it was buried pretty deep and under hard ground. So the guy that stepped on it was just blown 10 feet back, and we all were like just a little concussed or whatever. But do
you want to explain what a Legacy IED is?
It's something that's been sitting in the ground for a long time, and the ground has had time to get really hard, and there's not any indicators either. Usually there's disturbed earth or something like that. There's nothing. It's been there for so long that it's just not. You can't detect it. So we went to go, when this one went off, he hightailed it out of there, that guy. So you rarely ever get to see him. There was a time in Marjah that one went off, and we saw a guy running away, and we chased after him. We caught him, and we took him in our truck and took him back to Camp Hansen, not Okinawa Camp Hansen, but Marjah Camp Hansen. and they ended up releasing him the next day or something like that.
Oh, really? Fuck.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Damn,
we caught him pretty much red-handed. Yeah. And
well, I only remember one time when I was there, when I was in Marjah with 3-6 in 2011. So the next deployment after the one you assisted with, there was an IED in placer that a patrol just basically walked up on. And I guess this guy kind of looked up as he was emplacing it, tried to take off running, and the point man, took him out, like shot him. And then for a split second because I was in the command center, because I was the fires chief at the time, there was was the ROEs met for him to shoot? Like someone said that, and the 3 Alpha, which is the assistant operations officer, immediately was like, "Don't ever fucking say that again." He's like, "I am not going to investigate my point man that took out a dude who's putting in an IED for shooting him. Like, we're not going to do that, because all you're going to do is now make everybody question every time they go out if they're allowed to pull the trigger. Are they going to get investigated?" Exactly. They're like, "This was obviously no issue. Like, don't even bring it up." And I was just like, man, thank God someone with some common sense is speaking up. Because I mean, imagine if you're like, I don't know, man. That's got to be even what you said, having caught a guy, brought him alive too, and then they release him the next day. That's got to be super frustrating,
It was frustrating, They held him overnight, and we got word that he was let go early in the morning the next day.
So crazy.
We're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, what are we doing
then? Yeah, exactly. We're doing the right thing. I mean, we had every right to shoot him, because he pulled the trigger on us and set off an IED that hit one of our trucks that ultimately sent that driver home because he was concussed that bad. It's just like, what are we doing? Yeah.
When you got the call to go from Garmshire to Marjah, did you guys know that it was for like the invasion? Did you guys kind of know what was going on? Because for those that don't know, I mean, you're in a different part of the country, and it's not like you can sit down and watch the news every day and figure out that, oh, hey, there's an invasion getting ready to happen. Was that did you guys know that was going to be part of an invasion initially, or was that something you found out?
We did. well, we didn't know when we were in Garmsher that we were going to go there. We just got told, hey, pack your shit. We're driving up to Sistani, I think it was. That was right
Sistani.
next to Marjah. Yeah. And it actually wasn't, we did Sistani. We kind of, did our routes on that, kind of like a presence, patrol a little bit. And then we cleared an area which turned out to be the staging area north of Marjah. So we cleared all that out one night, my platoon, and then they burned it up in Hescos and whatever, and that ended up being the staging unit or the staging area. I forgot what they're called. They have a name, but
were you guys finding a lot of IEDs when you were clearing those areas out when you first got there?
No. But we found quite a bit when the day of the invasion.
Yeah.
We did route Badgers coming from the north.
Yep.
And right off Badgers turned into Fob Hansen, Camp Hansen. I can't remember if it was camp or Fob, but
I think they call it camp.
Yeah. There was a cemetery on top of the hill, and then down the hill, that's where Camp Hansen ended up being. We cleared that area out. We basically cleared that area for that camp, and we found some IEDs there. There was some IEDs up in that cemetery too, and all up and down Badgers.
Were the TTPs that you were seeing for IED emplacement, employment, was it the same that you had already seen in Garmsher, or were they doing it differently in Marjah?
It was pretty much the same, I think.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I encountered an actual gunfight. That was my first gunfight, was in Marjah on Route Badgers. So that was new to me too, so adding the element of being shot at with looking for IEDs is is a little hectic.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what role did you guys play once the invasion actually kicked off? Were you there with them, moving forward the entire time with the main force, or how did that work?
Well, our first mission was to get in there. They had already put a bridge up, one of the engineering bridges. I forget what they're called too, but it's been so long. So they put a bridge down, and our job was to get into the city, from the north. I'm sure there was, recon guys or somebody that was already in there. But as far as like 2nd Marine Division and whatnot, my truck was probably the first one into Marjah. And our first mission was to set up a spot for a FOB.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. And to clear Route Badgers, which was very narrow. We brought a D7 with us and plowed the whole thing, made it wider. And but ultimately our goal was, our mission was to clear all the routes down to I think we went down to the district center like twice, down Route Elephants. Or 605, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But our main mission was to clear the routes. So hire, I think they were called Jump.
The Jump platoon?
Yeah, the battalion commander's platoon or whatever. Yeah. So they could move freely without being hit. And there was times where we actually escorted them to places and whatnot. So
yeah, how is the local populace receiving you guys? Did you have any interactions with any locals or anything like that? Did it seem like they were no,
not so much. There was a lot of kids around. Where we were up north, did not see nearly as much IEDs, gunfights, or anything of the sort as 1-6 did in my sister platoon down there. My sister platoon down there with 1-6 came under a a lot of shit, and they encountered a lot of stuff. They were in fights every day, and it's funny because they were the least experienced and trained platoon.
Oh,
If
really?
you ask me, it was my platoon that should have been down there, but they did a great job, and they acted like a line platoon in trucks, kind of.
Damn. Yeah, man. That's the fact that you were like wanting, you mentioned earlier about like wanting, or you were like basically where you wanted to be. Like, this is the job I wanted to do. I'm out here sweeping for IEDs is kind of crazy. Because you see those old movies of like World War II or people like in Vietnam, like sweeping through a minefield. And it's like, dude, that looks horrifying,
Yeah.
But, it's somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah. And it's not like a minefield per se. I mean, technically it's considered a minefield.
Yeah.
But, you're not working with conventional mines.
For sure.
You're working with, HME and wood pressure plates and stuff that doesn't actually get detected by a metal detector a lot of times.
Yeah,
is very frustrating and scary, but you learn how to work it, and you learn what to look for and whatnot. So,
and there was always like new technologies because they came out with a couple different kind of sweepers, the mine sweepers, mine detectors. There was one, to counter different things like pull string IEDs and stuff like that, and everything else. The Taliban were pretty kind of ingenious too. I remember being there I think it was when I was in Sangin in 2013. Before we went in, we were talking about the IEDs, and the Taliban had been getting a lot of bad press because they'd been killing civilians, because civilians hit these things too. And It was becoming like locals are like, what the fuck, man? You're killing, other Afghans. Obviously they don't want it at all. So they started making pressure plates that you had to hit two sides of it to make it go off. And the only tires in country were military tires that were wide enough to hit both sides. So like their motorbike tires and their cars have like narrower tires.
Yeah,
so more narrow tires. It wouldn't set them off because it only hit one side of the pressure plate, not the other side. Shit like that. Yeah, shit like that. It's like, dude, someone thought of that. Someone's sitting around probably smoking opium or whatever, fucking like, hey, we should split the plates in half. But it's like, I don't know. It's like trying to counter all these things like that. I mean, that's not really countering that, but that's just like a way to show how they also knew that they needed to adjust their tactics to not only fight us better, but to protect their own image. Just like we use smart bombs, we don't just go drop dumb bombs on targets anymore.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's a guided ordnance because we want to be very specific about what we're doing. It's just kind of weird to look at it like that. When you guys were coming back, I mean, I don't know, did you guys lose anyone? Did any of the engineers? I know you said a few guys got injured, but did you guys lose anybody in Marjah?
My platoon did not. No, nobody was killed from my platoon. There was a couple of guys killed from my sister platoon that was with 1-6 down in the middle of the city. But for my platoon, no. We did send some guys home from being hit by too many IEDs and stuff like that.
What do you deem as too many? What's too many? It feels like one might be too many. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know. I think one is by the book. You're supposed to have a workup, a TBI workup, and all that stuff, and then they will determine if you are fit to stay or you need to go home. When I got hit with that 125-pounder, I told my platoon sergeant, I am good to go. Everybody in truck is good to go. We do not need a workup, anything like that. Because I didn't want to go home. I wanted to stay. I wanted to continue leading my Marines and doing my job. So I think when Gucci went home, he was hit, I think 4 times in the Husky.
Damn.
Which is a lot. It's just such a small vehicle, and there's a lot of boom, And, those fuckers are loud.
I bet. I bet, dude. I'm lucky to I've never been hit by one. Thank God.
Yeah. Not only just the the concussion and everything like that. It's just the snap of the explosion is so loud, even when you're in that truck. I remember when we were going into when we were looking for a spot to cross the river to go into Marjah from the north, we tried a couple of locations and we ultimately found one, but a different one. We were going through this little village, and it was funny because there was a couple of there was reporters there to be they were interviewing a couple of EOD techs on the north side of Marjah, the north side of the river. So we weren't in Marjah, but you could see it. And they're talking. Here we come, rolling up, no Huskies, just my gun truck and another truck behind me. And small, narrow alleyways. And we hit an IED. It was very small. It just flattened our tire and kind of blew off our compartments on our storage compartments on our side. But it was so loud, and we all had headaches after that. But the funny thing is that EOD tech was giving an interview saying, "Oh yeah, we just cleared all this out. It's all safe." Blah, blah, blah.
Boom.
Yeah, exactly. It was on film.
That's hilarious, man. I wonder if that footage is out there somewhere.
I'm sure it is.
That'd be fun. Oh, I'm gonna have to do some searching on the internet and see if I can find that.
I've never seen it, but
when you guys came back, when you were coming back, well, first off, you said getting hit. You said, "Hey, we're all good to go." Like none of us need help or anything. Were you actually good to go though, or were you like, "Man, I'm actually a little fucked up. Like I should probably take it easy for a couple days."
We all were. Yeah, we all were.
In what ways? Like, how did it mess with you?
So when it hit, I remember the explosion. EOD is in like the 5th or 6th truck. Each truck has got about 20 meters in between each, and so there's some distance between them. When that explosion went off, and then the next thing I know, EOD is at my door. That tells me that I was fucking knocked out, and because there's no way they could have gotten up there that fast, sweeping the whole way. There's just absolutely no way. And so that just tells me that I was knocked out. I had a horrible headache, just a concussion, felt sick to my stomach. And we everybody from that truck, my gunner bit the 50 cal. So he was all bloody. Yeah. And the truck was obliterated. And we all went into the Buffalo, and we sat there and waited for the wrecker to come. And it was after that time that we started taking the wrecker with us.
Yeah.
Because we had to sit on it for almost 12 hours.
Oh, wow. Really?
So, yeah, we all from that truck probably should have gone home and probably received a Purple Heart for it, because that's what they were doing at the time, but we didn't. We didn't say. We all shut up and told our platoon commander and platoon sergeant that we were good to go.
Would you still make that same decision now?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
I was their guide, man. All these guys looked up to me, and I led them. And we had already sent one guy home that was the guide, and then the other guy I talked about earlier, who was hit by the IED, he had to go home. So I was like I was the only sergeant left.
Yeah, that's not good for morale, man. When you start sending dudes left, one after another home because they're getting fucked up too bad. But good on them, because as well as I do, the command probably knew you were fucked up, but they wanted you to say it, But they also are like, man, if we send this guy home, there goes our last sergeant, like that's on their minds also. Oh man, so crazy, dude. What was it like when you guys pulled out, like the deployment's ending and you linked up with the, your other platoon and stuff, and like seeing the guys you hadn't seen in a while? I don't know how long it had been, but usually you don't see those guys for months at a time.
Yeah, no, I think I saw a couple of them when we went back. It's kind of fuzzy. Obviously, you go back to Camp Ashton and you do all that stuff, or Leatherneck, what do you want to call it. And we left from there, obviously. But when we got back, because we lost those two Marines down in Marjah, it was heavy, and those weren't the only guys that that were lost during that deployment. There was some guys that were actually from the line platoons that were killed, and there was an ABV operator, an assault breacher vehicle operator, or an mechanic that was crushed by one of the tanks, one of the ABVs.
Oh man,
it was just like a freak accident, you know. And so, but when we got back, there was a lot of drinking, man. A lot of drinking for me, you know, and just coping, remembering all the shit that I saw, you know, and stuff like that. I turned to booze, and
a lot of people do.
And we almost immediately, you know, we had leave, but then as soon as we came back from leave, we started working up again, you know, and I did all the workups, all that stuff. In the summer of 2011, no, early 2011, because I went to Sangin in 2011, but early 2011 we did Mojave Viper and all that stuff. But before then, I had gotten a DUI on base, and nothing happened legally, really. Pretty much, I was such a stellar Marine that they didn't NJP me. They suspended my NJP as long as I didn't get in trouble. Nothing would happen. It would go away. And that's what I mean when I said I had really good leadership. And so they took care of me. My platoon commander, my company commander really went to bat for me and stood up for me. And, you know, they told him, you know, that he doesn't deserve, he fucked up, you know, we just got back. All this shit happened. And so I got my DUI. Fast forward a little bit to Mojave Viper. We completed all our training. You know, last night is Warriors night, and they gave you beer, and they supplied alcohol and kegs and all this shit and all this stuff. So everybody got pretty toasty, and we were attached to tanks, or tanks were attached to CEB. They were going to help with the route clearance package when we went forward against Afghanistan, and we didn't get along with tanks. You know, they had some bad apples, we had some bad apples, and they just bumped heads. And that night, I was in the DFAC and the chow hall, and one of my Marines came running in up to me and a couple other guys, and was like, yo, Cotton's getting jumped outside by some of the tankers. So Cotton was the Lance Corporal, and so I ran out there as fast as I could and tried to defuse the situation and end up getting into the fight myself. And during the fight, I was grabbed from behind, and nobody said who they were or anything like that. So I'm in the middle of fighting, so I'm defending myself. So I was able to get, you know, my arm out, and I just kind of did a swift elbow. It was my fucking sergeant major.
Oh,
so
damn it!
The sergeant major who suspended my NJP, and so I kind of elbowed him in the face, and needless to say, my NJP was revoked, or my suspension was revoked, and I got reduced in rank. They took some of my money. They didn't put me in restriction or anything like that, but they took my rank and took half my money, and told me I was not going to Afghanistan with them.
Oh, really?
I was fucking heartbroken. You know, I was devastated. I spent all this time working up with these guys, making sure that they knew what they were doing as far as route clearance. Didn't know we were going to Sangin, or in that area, the Sangin Valley. So I got told that I got NGP'd. I got told I wasn't going. They left, and I sat there and twiddled my thumbs. And I was down at engineer training area. They sent me down there after I got in trouble. So I was instructing other Marines, mostly Pogues. I was a Pogue myself, but training them about counter IED and all that stuff, until all our engineers that were forward started getting hit and killed and whatnot. And then all of a sudden they needed a combat replacement. So sure enough, they came knocking on my door. Hey, Matisi, you're going to be attached to 1-5 and you're going to Sangin. I was like, Good. Good. I'm glad. It's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go with my platoon, but
Yeah.
now is my chance to go and do what I really wanted to do all along.
Are you almost going backwards? Like, isn't it normally like a junior guy is going to be on a line platoon, a more senior guy is going to be on a route clearance platoon, and
Yeah, probably. I mean, you obviously your hires are up there, are in there too, and they call the shots and all that stuff. And probably what I would have, had I gone with the route clearance platoon, I would have been, the guide again. I would have been the lead truck commander, blah blah blah, all that stuff. And yes, I got reduced to corporal, and I was sent over as a line marine. An engineer attached to infantry company platoon, doing what a lance corporal usually does.
Yeah. What's that like? What's that like coming in as a combat replacement, knowing that you're coming there because people are getting fucked up?
A little scary. It's kind of a kick in the nuts. It's like, especially when I got there. I sat on Nole for a little bit, and didn't do anything. We actually built some stuff on Nole and another PB around the area. And I just waited until they told me, this is where you're going. This is, and that's it. So I think it was about a week and a half. I sat on Nole until they figured out where they were going to send me. And every night I got briefed, by the first sergeant and the platoon sergeant. So I knew what was going on in the area for the most part. And I knew that, some PBs were more IED heavy than others, where they were more so gunfights all the time. Mm-hmm. And ultimately they sent me to PB Fahim, which was the northernmost PB north of Transformer. And except for, I think there was a recon.
Alcatraz.
Yeah, that was way farther up north.
Yeah.
But we were told that they really couldn't move freely because of the sniper threat. So when they told me, all right, you're going to the most kinetic area in this valley right now, and the IEDs aren't that prevalent, but you are going to get into gunfights every day because that's what they're doing right now. And I was like, fuck. All right.
Yeah, like, oh shit, okay. It's about to get real.
Yeah, but I told myself, I was with a couple other Marines with that went over there with me. Mike Maniglia, who's still my really good friend, and he ended up coming with me to Fahim. And we all were sitting around one night before we left, and we're like, all right, I told them, I was like, this is what's happening. They kind of asked me to brief the younger guys, so I told them, this is what's happening. This is where we're going, and this is what we're up against. And I kind of told them then, I was like, look, you need to start thinking that you're here for the rest of your life. And as soon as you start thinking that, you'll be able to do your job a lot better. And because that's what I adopted in Marjah and in Garmser, and it's certainly what I was going to continue to practice in Sangin. So PB Fahim, yeah, that's where I went, and it was no joke. That's what it was.
How were you received as a combat replacement there?
I was a little nervous about that because I've always heard, stories. You have to prove yourself, you have to earn your keep and all this crap. I knew the engineers that were already there. Usually there's one per squad. So there was already 2 guys there. And so I was being put in there too for the 3rd time, but there was actually 2 of us going, me and Mike. And then there was already 2 guys there, Diffuso and Michi. And I was a little nervous about being, coming in there new them thinking I didn't know what I was doing or anything like that. But it turns out that they opened their arms up, and because they had already taken so many casualties, and as soon as I went on my first patrol with them, they saw that I knew what I was doing, that I could handle my own, and I could get them to and fro without being fucking hurt, by an IED.
How long were you there? How long were you with the platoon before you got in your first firefight?
Dude, the day I rolled up from Nole in our trucks, they drove us up there. We pulled off of 611 and made a left off of 611 into the dirt trail, and they sent out ground guides to walk. They sent out ground guides to walk in front of the trucks to the gate of PB Fahim, and sure enough, it was like ding 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 ding. The trucks were getting lit up, getting shot at, and I was like, "Whoa, holy shit! This is not." They weren't kidding. This is really what's happening. And we got into the PB, and they had just taken a casualty that day. Corporal Singh from 1-5, he was killed. And this was a really big eye opener, and a kick in the nuts again was when we pulled up, I got off the truck, they put his body on the truck, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? What did I get myself into?
Yeah.
And they also engaged an IED in placer that day. The snipers in the platoon engaged, or the designated marksman, they engaged IED in placer that day when I got there too. So it was wild the first day. But the first actual firefight probably to the next day.
Yeah, the one that first time you were involved in one, other than riding up.
And then it was like every day after that.
That's crazy, man. That's a different world, dude. Sangin, man. Sangin does not surprise. For people that don't know, Sangin is obviously a super shitty area, but if you look at it on a map, you have Route 611, which is the main route that runs north-south through it. On the western side of 611 is the green zone, and it kind of, the land kind of fades down a little bit to the river there. And then on the eastern side of 611 is the brown zone. And it's super weird. Even if you look at it on a map, it's literally the road on one side is all green. Yeah, and on the other side is all brown. It's super weird. Was Fahim in the brown zone or the green zone?
Green zone.
Okay.
I never went into the brown zone.
Yeah. We rarely went into the brown zone. From what I was told, the brown zone was super shitty. And it was way more IEDs up in there and stuff like that. And I think that was kind of a known thing since the first guys got into Sangin. It was kind of like, hey man, if you're going into the brown zone, that's like something you need to be ready to go do. That's got to be kind of like I don't know, an operation, kind of thing. It needs to be planned ahead, not just some simple patrol through that area.
Walk through. But they did just do regular presence patrols and security patrols in there, in the fish tank and by Wishtan and all that shit.
Yeah.
That kid that I was talking about earlier, Lance Corporal Tubbs, he went into the brown zone. He was attached to 1-5 as well, and he went into the brown zone, and he ended up finding over 150 IEDs during his time there. So yeah, that just it kind of gauges the level of IEDs that was there. In the green zone, where I was, by PB Fahim in Kodazay, the village of Kodazay, there weren't that many IEDs. I think the time that I was there, which wasn't very long before I got hit, I found maybe 5 or 6.
Oh, really?
There wasn't that many. And the other engineers weren't finding that many either. Like I said, it was a lot of fighting.
Yeah, they used that terrain. So the green zone was easier for them to fight in because they could hide in the tree lines. Yeah. They would shoot from one tree line through a tree line to the Marines, so that when you're looking, you're thinking it's coming from this tree line close to you, but it's actually beyond it. They'd find holes in the trees to shoot through, and dude, they were really good about putting some standoff and some terrain in between themselves and whoever they were taking shots at. When you when you guys were out there getting into firefights or whatever, was it more like quick action, take a couple pot shots at you, you guys return fire, and then it kind of dies down, or did you see a lot of like extended? Yeah.
There was a lot of sustained firefights for and there was a lot of just pop shots, and we would return fire, and it would stop, and everything would go back to normal. We continue on with the patrol, but then there was like we were put in L shape, U shape, O shape sometimes, and just and we had to fight our way out of those ambushes, and a lot of times it was like half an hour, maybe even longer. I don't know, but
yeah,
I think probably the average firefight was probably about 20 minutes.
Okay. One thing I saw one
long.
Yeah, it feels a little, yeah, especially when you're getting shot, especially if it's accurate. You're like, fuck, this is.
It's always accurate.
It makes you wonder after a while. At first, it's for someone that's never done it. It's like, man, I'm gonna go get in a firefight. Can I do it? Like, is it? And it's once you've been in enough. You've been shot at enough times, or your life has been on the line a couple times. You're like, you know what? Fuck that, dude. Like, it kind of gets old after a little bit. And I know by the end of our deployment, we were like, dude, let's just get out of Sangin, man. Like, I'm all about going and deploying and stuff, but I need this in like small bursts. I can't be sitting here for fucking. I don't know. It's a real shithole for sure.
It was.
Man, it's just crazy. When I was there, we were seeing what we would see is the civilian populace. You would suddenly see the civilian populace disappear. Or we'd be sitting there like in the green zone, and all of a sudden you'd see all the women and kids gathering their like goats and shit and getting out of the area. There'd be kites being flown, where they're all signaling each other. And then it was like, oh shit, something's about to happen. Was it kind of like that there too? Was it still the same way?
Yeah, we usually bounced in the morning on patrol right at dawn. As soon as the sun came up and we got all our shit together and we would step. So it was around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and sure enough, they saw us leave. They left. Mm-hmm. They would walk towards the brown zone, and we knew right then. It was like, all right, well, Taliban's in the area. We gotta stand by, and as soon as there was a tree line that was almost immediately to our west of PB Fahim. PB Fahim was like a little diamond shape or a triangle shape PB. It kind of faced northwest, and there was a tree line right almost maybe a couple 100 feet to our west, and then there was another tree line, and it seemed like in between those two tree lines, there was like a little canal system and whatever. And it seemed like as soon as we reached that second tree line, it was game on, every time, just like, because it kind of opened up a little bit more. There was a little more open areas where they could shoot at us easier while we're crossing a field or whatever. But there was also a pretty big, it was the village of Kodazay, and there was a pretty big system of compounds and low walls and canals that were like a maze, and it's easy to channel us into that shit and hit us with a machine gun, which happened. Happened a couple times.
Yeah, I don't want it to sound like Marines were out there just taking casualties and not giving anything back.
We were whooping ass too.
Yeah, let's hear what was the effect of the Marines on the enemy? What were you seeing there in these engagements?
We took out a lot. I can remember one day in particular. We had come back. My squad had come back from an overnight, kind of like an OP, OPLP, observation post, listening post, and we were trying to ambush the enemy, trying to get the upper hand on them when they came out early in the morning. We were already going to be there and we were going to light them up, whatever. Didn't happen. So we were walking back to the PB, and the other squad was walking out to start their patrol. And I remember we crossed paths, and I told the lead sweeper, who was not an engineer, he was a grunt, and I just told him, I gave him a pound. I said, just be careful out there, and we went back to base, started taking off all our gear. We were gonna, rest for a little bit and go on post, clean our weapons, all that good stuff. And it wasn't maybe 20 minutes later, we heard a burst of gunfire, and they came under contact, and one of their Marines was shot, and we got the call to be the QRF. So we ran out there, and I swept as fast as I could to the area where they were, and I remember coming up to the corner where they were, and I was coming up to them, and I could see rounds impacting the ground, like walking it up on us as we were walking up on the corner. And I told my mortarman, I was like, it's coming from that compound. And he took his 61 or 61 or 60s?
60s.
60. He took a 60, and he asked me how far it was. I just yelled out what I thought the distance was, and sure enough, it happened to be spot on, and it landed right in the middle of the compound.
That's a good mortarman right there.
Yeah, and we had Gunner Marine with us, and he went out with us as QRF, and we got into a pretty big firefight that time. Long story short, we made a dynamic breach. I blew out the wall. We ran into there, and we saw some blood trails and all that stuff. And we got word through ICOM chatter later that he had killed like 4 of them. So that was a good day for us. It was a bad day for us too, because we lost another Marine that day. But I saw an amazing act of valor and just being a hero that day. It was another Marine that ran into basically the fray and picked up his brother that was no longer with us, and carried him out. I'll never forget that image, that I turned around during this firefight and saw him carrying his buddy. That was one of his really good friends, and carrying it to the truck, but I know you wanted something juicy and good, and I brought it to another dark place, but
hey man, that's the reality of war, man.
Yeah, but we ended up killing 4 of them that day, and there was other days where we took out other ones that were fighting with us and take pop shots at us. I took out a lot of sniper positions, murder holes. Murder hole is basically a hole for just big enough for you to look out, and a rifle to point the muzzle out and shoot at us. So I got the permission to blow a lot of those up, and a lot of sniper hides and fighting positions. So I got to use a lot of my demo.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're carrying it, might as well use it, right?
Yeah, I in a squad like that, you kind of share the wealth, and C4 doesn't weigh that much. It's just it's like a pound each stick or something like that, 1.25 pounds a stick. And but I would have like 12 of them, 16 of them. So I would divvy them out, just like the rest of the squad would divvy out their mortars or their fucking ammo and all this stuff. But the guys I was with, some of them were really scared to carry into C4. I was like, nothing's going to happen to you. It's not going to blow up on you. You need heat and friction. And the likelihood of that happening while you're carrying it is very unlikely.
Does it feel weird to walk around as a civilian now and think back, like, man, I used to carry around like 10 pounds of C4 in my backpack? That was part of my job.
It's pretty wild, yeah. Anytime I tell people that I was a combat engineer and they ask what that means, they think I'm crazy. They think you must have been crazy to do that job. And I don't think I was crazy. I just think I was good at it, and I got to a point where I wasn't scared anymore.
Yeah.
If you're scared doing that job, bad things might happen.
Yeah.
With any job, be complacent, bad things happen.
I always try to let a little bit of nervousness kind of be my, kind of feed off of it a little bit. Like, man, that just means I'm going to do this better because I'm making sure I'm doing it the right, everything right, and I'm not fucking up, as a JTAC. I was kind of going through my mind constantly.
Well, yeah, that's a big time job right there.
Well, I mean, no worse than fucking going out and blowing up IEDs. I don't know, man. We all had our weird jobs, I guess. It's
Yeah,
stuff.
I guess.
There's a lot of pressure, man, to not mess up. I mean, and it's all on you. You're the first man down the trail as an engineer to make sure that there's no explosives. So it's like, how much more pressure can that be? Did you ever have a working dog? Did you guys ever have the military working
We
dogs?
had dogs. Yeah, we had dogs. I didn't have one. I
No.
was not a dog handler. We did have dog handlers in our platoon. We also had a tracking dog too that used to track enemy. His name was Rico, and the other dog's name I can't remember. Didn't get utilized very much.
Mm.
The dog handler was kind of a shitbag and kind of neglected the dog a little bit. And
Oh, really? That sucks.
yeah, left him in its cage, didn't feed him, constantly hot, dehydrated, all that shit. I think he ultimately got removed from the platoon and whatnot. But
That's fucked up, man.
the dogs are only as good as their handlers, and the dogs can be overworked very easily, and then they're useless. You know, I relied on my gut most of the time and visual indicators. Where I think the IED is probably where it is, or where I think the enemy would put the IED is probably where it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like I said, I didn't say this, but the metal detectors that we had were absolutely useless. I think the point of a metal detector is to let the guys behind me feel okay, you know, because I know as an engineer that this shit's not picking up anything. It's the IEDs that I encountered in Sangin had balsa wood. I've seen a couple with some carbon rods from batteries,
Yep.
which can be picked up, but the biggest or the most low detection IED, if that's a term, I found was gum wrappers as contacts, like the aluminum in the gum
Really?
wrappers for the contacts. Yeah,
I wouldn't have thought that those would be strong enough, could hold enough of a
they
charge
were.
to do it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and it was absolutely 100% could not be detected by a metal detector unless you found the battery pack, and the battery packs were offset.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
man.
were
They're
behind a tree or
smart.
something. Yeah, they're very smart. And you got to know that. You got to respect that. Otherwise, it's gonna bite you in the ass.
Yeah,
You gotta give them their credit.
for sure. Now, you said you had gotten injured on this deployment. And was it via an IED or firefight
I
or?
got shot by a sniper.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, we had been out all night. We had been out all day the day before. We went out on a patrol and ended up staying in a compound after fighting here and there throughout the day. So we stayed in a compound that was relatively close to the PB. It was probably still visible from the G-Boss. And we stayed all night. We were out with another squad. They stayed. I can't remember if they stayed in the compound with us or they stayed in another compound. But nonetheless, when it came time to leave the next day, they left first. And on the way back to PB Fahim, the second guy in the stick stepped on IED crossing a land bridge and broke his leg. And they came under pretty accurate small arms fire, machine gun fire, and whatnot. So our job was to set up support by fire, basically. And there was an adjacent compound to where they were. And I was told to put the machine gunners on the roof, and a machine gunner and a saw gunner. And so I ran over there. It was only a couple compounds away, very close in this little intricate maze of canals and compounds. And I ran over there without sweeping because I just didn't have time. So I just ran over there and got up on the roof, put the machine gunner in his spot, and I turned around. He was facing north. I turned around and I was taking the saw gun. I was clearing the way for the saw gunner. Again, metal detector doesn't do anything. It just makes the other guys feel better. That's what I think anyway. So I'm just visually scanning more than anything. And when I was crossing that roof to the south side of the roof, all I can explain it feeling like is being hit by a truck. I've never been hit by a truck, but that's what I imagine it felt like. I got spun around. I remember that. And it's kind of like the movies where everything slows down and then it comes rushing back really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever came up with that cinematic, I don't know, feeling must have had a first-hand experience, I think, because that's what it was exactly like. And I just remember laying on my back. It came in my arm in the back, and it came out my chest, hit the back of the plate, and went back in.
Oh, God, that's like a worst-case scenario.
Yeah, it was bad. So my arm was completely shattered, and I landed on it. So I'm laying on my arm on this roof, looking up at the sky. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and immediately, almost as immediate as it happened, almost as fast as it happened, I had my corpsman, who I'm still friends with today, and another Marine at my side. My corpsman, Blake Gardner, he went to go hit me with some morphine, and he actually hit himself in the thumb. And
oh, God.
Yeah. So they pulled my arm out from underneath and put it in a hasty sling, and they lowered me off the roof. And they reassessed me down there. And that's when they found the big hole in my chest and all that shit. And by this time, I'm feeling labored, breathing, and whatnot. We weren't sure if it was a sucking chest wound. I don't think it ended up being a sucking chest wound. But for safety purposes, I told him, go into my IFAC and grab my halo, just put it on for me, please. For some reason, he didn't have one. But I guess you're supposed to use your own, right?
That's a chest seal for those that don't know.
Yeah, it's got a little valve on it, and it releases the pressure that builds up from a tension pneumothorax, which is a sucking chest wound.
Yeah.
And they called the bird. I didn't know if I was gonna die. I felt like maybe, everything kind of got like weird, slowed down. Everything it's fuzzy when I look back at it. So the birds, they called Pedro. Pedro came under fire when they came on scene. So they had to circle around a couple of times. They moved me to an alleyway. My litter team moved me to an alleyway to stage me until they moved me out into the field for the bird. So I'm sitting there waiting. There's still the big gunfight going on between the other squad and my squad, and they're shooting at the helicopters at this time. So the helicopters circled around a couple of times, neutralized the threat, and they were able to land, and they put me on the bird. Looking back, I still get shit to this day from these guys, as I probably could have walked to the bird myself, but for whatever reason they carried me. They put me on the bird, and the flight medic asked me how much pain I was in, all that stuff. I was like, I'm hurt, and he was like, all right, I'm gonna give you something for your pain. And they shot me full of ketamine.
You're like, I've been shot in the chest. Kind of feels like that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you ever had ketamine, but that shit is no joke. And I don't remember shit after that except for landing in Camp Bastion and the doctors, and again, like a movie, being on a stretcher and the lights going over, my head and all that stuff. And then the next thing I know, I woke up, I was at Bagram, and then Germany, and then back home.
How were you processing all of this? Like the reality of like laying there going, oh man, I just got shot. Like this is for real. Like I mean, what was
That's
going
what
through
I
your
mean.
mind? Can you remember what was going through your mind at the time?
I thought to myself, am I gonna die? I did think that, because I felt so strange. There wasn't a whole lot of pain anymore. Yeah, my arm was broken. He did end up giving me a dose of morphine, so that helped. But I remember just being like, excuse me, is this my time? I don't know. Am I gonna die looking up at this fucking blue sky that's so hot on my back because they had taken off my flak and everything. The ground's so hot, and I don't know. I felt weird, and I never really thought about until later on in my recovery, and sometimes today, in this day, in time, like, wow, man, somebody tried to fucking kill me, you know. Somebody had me in their sights and pulled the trigger trying to kill me. And what they were doing is they were shooting people right here because we don't have any armor right there. And I'm pretty sure that's where they were aiming for. But I think I was on a backswing with my metal detector because the way it lines up is like almost perfect. The trajectory was just like,
Yeah, that's another thing, man.
lucky.
They count, it's another way that they would counter us. I know in Marjah, when I was there in 2011 with 3-6, we had Charlie 1-6 attached to us. They got kind of split up when they got into country. Their companies did, and we got one of them. And their first 3 weeks in country, man, they lost 2 corpsmen and a Marine. Within a couple weeks from single shots right underneath the body armor, and it was just hitting guys right in the what's that? What do you call that? The pelvic girdle area, where basically if you sever one of those arteries, unless you have, you have, there's like a tourniquet style thing. It's almost like a big C clamp that you put on the leg that can push down on it, but you can't get a regular tourniquet. So all 3 of those dudes bled out before the bird even got, well within the golden hour, but before the bird could even get in the ground. And that's just one of those tactics that it seemed like they were getting pretty good at. And then we ended up taking out a guy that we thought was the marksman, and we didn't have any issues with that afterwards. How was, was it tough coming home and seeing your family and being like, shit, I got injured. Now my family's got to see me as an injured guy, or, I don't want them to see me this way. Some people have a problem with that. Like, I don't want my family or friends to see me laid up in a hospital bed.
No, I didn't have that issue. My mom came and she hung out with me for a few days, and while I was in Portsmouth, I think that's where I was. Portsmouth. I know I didn't have that feeling. I didn't have that feeling at all. I was upset that I was upset myself. Looking back. Maybe if I would have popped my head up before I ran all the way up on the roof, I would have seen who shot me. Highly unlikely. But I beat myself up for a long time about it. Maybe I could have done things different, maybe not run up on that roof so fast, or I don't know. But ultimately,
you never know.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
And having, attempting to try to think of how the outcome could have been changed by your own actions, that outcome could have been worse too, though. Maybe the shot lined up on your fucking neck or something. That's so it's you can't ever tell someone, hey man, you can't think about it, don't worry about it. It's on them they're gonna have to get over that feeling. But I think a lot of people forget that, if I would have done this, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Well, maybe if you'd have done that, something worse would have happened too. So you can't beat yourself up for something, that in the moment you don't really have control of. So how was your recovery?
My recovery was long. My arm was completely shattered. I still don't have full mobility in it, but I had several surgeries, bone grafts. The hardware that's in my arm is stripped out. The doctors in Germany, or the doctors in Bagram, were only supposed to stabilize me until I got to Germany. Mm-hmm. And instead, they did a surgery where they put titanium plate and 13 screws in my arm, and they stripped out like half of the screws, so I can't get it out. So now, today, it's still a source of pain for me, and it would probably be relieved if I could get this hardware out. The bone's healed enough and solid enough that it could come out if they could get it out, but they can't. So after bone grafts and other surgeries and whatnot, it took a long time. And then the unfortunate part of all this is that I was in chronic pain and I was put on pain meds, and I got addicted to pain meds for a long time. And I'm not today. I'm off them and off alcohol and all that stuff. I'm 100% clean and sober, but it's a very long battle, fighting demons and physical pain. And I don't know, it was a long journey. The past 8 years have been for me.
That's good that you got off it, man. A lot of guys can't say that, you know.
It took a long time. I was on them for a very long time, well after the fact of needing them.
I think, you know,
addiction is.
I talked about it on a recent podcast also. I think maybe with Brian Buckley, part of the Hellman Valley Growers Company. He's a former MARSOC raider into the cannabis industry, and he's into not just like, hey, let's go burn one, you know, but they're actually pushing research to help with to use cannabis for like PTSD or pain purposes rather than get people addicted to opioids, you know. And I was talking to my dad recently, and he had lost a lot of weight and stuff like that. His knee pain and back pain had subsided, but his doctor was still giving him like a crazy amount of pills, like oxycodones or something like that. And he's like, you know what? Why am I taking this? Like, I don't need it. And he said he just stopped taking it, you know. And I'm like, man, you're lucky that you can identify like, hey, why am I even taking this anymore? Like, I'm taking it because I want to, not because I need to at this point.
Exactly.
And you're lucky that you can just put it down and walk away from it. Where, I mean, how many veterans, their lives are fucked because of the amount of opioids that they just got into and continue to take even beyond the time of needing it.
It was crazy. I mean, the VA just kept giving them to me. No questions asked, man.
Yeah, man.
90 pills a day or 90 pills a month, you know, or 120 pills a month. And without fail, as soon as I needed more, there they were, without question. They mailed them to me. I didn't even have to go see a doctor half the time. I was on a continuing delivery every month. And what do they think was going to happen?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's crazy, man. Well, like I said, I'm glad to hear that you found a way to get off of it and move beyond that.
It's been about a year. It'll be a year in January.
Does that have anything to do with why you got off of social media for a while? Because when I first started my Instagram page, my J. Kramer Graphics page, the Sangin Valley Gun Club page was one of the first ones I started following. My buddy Doc Emil, who 3 deployments, all 3 of them to Sangin, introduced me to your page, and I know you had a really great following, and, you know, posting constantly and stuff like that, and then you kind of cut off for a little bit. Did that have to do with that?
Yeah, kind of. You know, like I said, I battled a lot of demons inside, and which bled over into my relationship with my wife and ultimately my family later, my kids. It was just taking way too much of my energy. The page itself, I was well in the throes of addiction and alcoholism, and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing as a man, as a father, as a husband. So I put it down for a long time. I think about a year. Then I came back and I tried to do it again, and it wasn't working, and I put it down again. And it wasn't until I stopped doing the pills and the booze, and it was right around the time of the Afghan pullout and the Kabul incident that I got back on there, and I had something to say about it, And I thought, well, what better platform to do it than the platform that I already have? I never disabled the account. I just stopped doing it, so it was still there. It's still, people could visit it, look at the content, all that stuff. So I came back in August and been pumping out since. So
it's good stuff, man. I think, me and thousands of other people that have walked the streets of Sangin or whatever can relate to the post, and you memorialize people that were killed there, and it's just I think you built a really cool little community of people that can relate to each other and stuff like that. So that's why I wanted to have you on, dude. I was like, dude, this guy's been there, done that. He's been as a combat engineer in Sangin, walking Route 611, dude. Fuck that. That's more ballsy than anything I fucking did.
Well, I mean, to each his own. It's all relevant. We all had our job and our thing to do over there, and
for sure.
We did it. But it was, yeah. I've tried to go a different direction with the page lately. I try to post more stories and personal accounts of what happened to me, to my friends, to my brothers over there. And I've noticed that I get a lot more interaction. I also try to interact with my audience as much as possible, just so they know that there's actually a face and a person behind all this. It's not just I'm posting this shit and ignoring my fucking fans, or not fans, I shouldn't say that, my audience. But
I'm a fan, bro. We're fans, man.
Thanks, man. It just sounds fucking conceited. I don't know.
I know
it sounded to me. But there's so many veteran pages out there that are not doing that thing. I'm going to try to be diplomatic as possible about this, but they don't engage. They don't acknowledge that you're commenting on their posts or liking their posts, or not that I'm looking for that. That's not why I do it. But I want to acknowledge my followers, because one, that's just the kind of person I am, and two, it's important that I keep these people connected and keep myself connected with these people. I've been able to link people that haven't seen or talked to each other in years, link them back up by just simply tagging somebody's name and them seeing their buddy, and oh wow, I can start talking to this person now. And it feels good. I'm being of service, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah, man, for sure. Anytime you get a message like that, like, hey, fucking, or you even see it in the comments where they'll start talking to each other, like, oh man, look, these people haven't.
It feels so good.
That does so much more for veteran mental health than a lot of organizations. You know what I'm saying? Like just knowing that, oh, hey, so and so's still out there. Let me reach out to them, and get or be on the other end, getting a phone call from one of your buddies you haven't talked to in forever. It's just, what better way to brighten somebody's day than to have a conversation and maybe relive some of the old funny stories from your time in or whatever, Yeah,
absolutely. And that's what I'm striving to do, and that's what I plan to continue to do. And Sangin Valley Gun Club is just recently, we got our non-for-profit. It's run by 5 of us. And the original founder, I came on shortly after, and then we have 3 other guys that kind of like the business side, the website, and English side of it, because so many of our brothers are from the UK. So we have that going for us, and then we have our graphic designer, and everybody is a Marine and a Royal Marine. And what we're focusing on doing this coming up year, we recently just put out some shirts and sweatshirts and stuff like that to raise money. So next year we're going to start honoring the Gold Star families with flowers on the anniversaries of their fallen. So that's what we're using the proceeds of our merchandise for, is to fund the flowers to send out on those prospective days. And that's our number one thing right now, is doing that. I will continue to honor these guys every day that it happens, every year, as long as this continues. Ultimately, we want to also erect 2 memorials, one in the U.S. and one in the U.K. for the Sangin Valley, because there's been there's no GWAT, memorial yet in the National Mall, and I was doing some research, and I guess there's a bill being blocked to have it built, here on the hill, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why anybody would try to block that from happening, but I guess it is.
That doesn't seem like it'd be a good look.
No,
for a politician.
We deserve it, and so we're trying to have something erect in the next, 5 years. One over here in the middle of the country somewhere, and one over in the UK that people could go, kind of like, a Mecca, and for lack of a better term, to see their people memorialized on a wall.
That's good stuff, man. Well, I think it's all admirable work. Like I said, I've been following the page for a long time. Actually, someone stole it from me, unfortunately, but I bought one of the hoodies back in the day, from when they had the UK one. Yeah, with the little, it had the Reaper, little Reaper logo on it and stuff. Man, that was like my favorite hoodie for the longest time.
We rebranded and gone a different direction with our logo. Something a little more dignified and grown up. We love the OG Grim Reaper, but it's time to change a little bit. And,
nothing wrong with that, man. All kinds of companies do that rebranding and stuff. So, what's the website? Where can they find that? Items to purchase at?
Yeah, SanginValleyGunClub.com, all one word. And there's information on all the members, or all the founding members, the board, if you want to call it. Little information on us, some of the projects we're working on. Our 501c3 is on there, and there's a shop button too that you can go on there and look at what we got. We just recently started pre-orders on December 2nd, and I think the shop may be closed because we're starting to fulfill the orders that we got in. But it won't be the end. There will be more to come.
That's good stuff, man. Well, I hope coming on the podcast helps you guys get some more traction and some more eyeballs on your merchandise. Yeah, dude, for sure. I appreciate you coming on and telling your story. Obviously, it's your story, so getting it out there is. Some people like to do it, some people don't, especially being shot. Some people wouldn't want to talk about that. So I appreciate you kind of talking us through that, what that experience was like for you, and hopefully it gives the listener, the audience here, a better understanding of some of the stuff that you guys went through over there in the Sangin Valley and stuff. So thanks again, Patrick, for coming on. For everybody
thanks
else,
for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Oh, for sure. For everybody else, check out my website, jkramergraphics.com. My Instagram is @formeractionguys and @jkramergraphics. And that's it, man. And
thank you, brother.
For sure. And this